Welcome to the Stormsurf video surf forecast for the week starting Sunday, August 10th. Brought to you by Vunabaka.com, a new surf and residential community in the island of Fiji. First, we take a look at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean. We have Hurricane Julio, northeast of the island of Hawaii. Redeveloped Hurricane Genevieve over the dateline. Remnants of what was Typhoon Halong over Japan, and low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, with yet another low pressure system developing over the northern dateline region. Fairly active for the time of year. Let's put this in motion. As you notice, both systems, the tropical systems start fading out. Genevieve dies out, but Julio continues on its track, trying to hold together, not quite making it, starting to get absorbed by low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, recurves but does not redevelop and pretty much fades out, and that's the end of it, and becomes absorbed by low pressure moving into the Gulf. So things to settle down over the long haul in the North Pacific, but it was a pretty good run while we had it. Next we take a look at South Pacific significant wave heights. Small gale system, 34-foot seas, 35-foot seas actually outside the Southern California swell window, pushing towards Chile. Indiscriminate low pressure, 22-foot seas southwest of Tahiti, and another system pushing under Tasmania, but nothing of real significance occurring. Let's take a look at the details. Let's take a look at jet stream level winds. These winds up at 30,000 feet or so help support the formation of storms and direct their travel path when they do form. Of notice, a trough trying to develop just a bit southwest of New Zealand, not particularly strong winds feeding up into the trough in the 90 to 100 knot range, and fairly pinched off, not real supportive of gale development. Otherwise, a zonal flow going flat west to east, down at around 65 south, almost right on the edge of Antarctic ice, offering no support for gale development. Let's put this into motion, see what happens. Of most interest, again, continues to be this trough in this area, but it pinches off quickly by Tuesday, and yet another trough, though, tries to build behind on Wednesday with more wind energy in it. 150 knot winds, a little bit more supportive of gale development, and that actually pushes well up the east coast of New Zealand into Wednesday and even Thursday before it too gets cut off. Notice a big ridge here pushing into Antarctica, pretty much shutting down any development in that region. So then we're off into Friday, and yet another bit of wind energy tries to build under New Zealand, but doesn't make very good headway to the north. Just kind of a flat east to west flow, and this ridge continues here now in the southeast Pacific, not supporting gale development there. And we're out 180 hours. Good amount of wind here under New Zealand, but it's down at 62 south and doesn't look like it's going to be particularly supportive or far enough north to get any gale development going, with the Antarctic ice, Ross ice sheet being at about 65 south. Let's go take a look at surface level winds. So this chart, surface level winds, surface level pressure, depict a small low south of Tahiti. A little area 45 knot wind sort of aimed to the north, but not particularly large in size and not particularly healthy looking. We'll put this into motion. That system continues into Monday or so before it peters out. Good for probably some swell energy into Tahiti, and also good to help lower the pressure in Tahiti, which might drive the Southern Oscillation Index a bit negative, which is of course good if you're watching the development of El Nino. Otherwise, we watch the pattern here. Another low tries to get organized southwest of Tahiti on Tuesday. 45 knot winds. Gets a bit of exposure here into the South Pacific into Wednesday evening and Thursday, but not particularly strong winds, only in the 35 knot range, and actually getting a little bit obscured by New Zealand itself. But fetch continues in that area. Another system tries to organize. Notice strong high pressure here over the Tasman Sea, and so you would want to see low pressure working its way up and along the side of this, actually getting a bit of a gradient going between the two pressure systems, but that doesn't look particularly in the offing per the models at this moment in time. And yet another system on to about Sunday or so, but notice the wind vectors are more pointed southeast than up to the northeast, so nothing really aimed up at the Great Circle paths towards the U.S. or even Hawaii for that matter. Let's go take a look at the significant wave height charts. First off, we're going to go back in time a little bit. Monday of the previous week, notice a small but fairly strong storm, 52-foot seas. Checking out the Great Circle paths, some of that energy, the southern quadrant of it, was barely aimed up the Southern California swell window. Good for probably some small background swells starting about midweek or so, and we'll put this into motion. You notice this system actually, still with 42-foot seas, makes it clearly into the swell window for Southern California, and for that matter, Northern California on too, about as southwest as you can get, 220 degrees. Anyway, that continued and then quickly faded out. And then we're into yet another system. This was on Wednesday or so, relative to Hawaii, up the Great Circle paths here. What is that? About the 208 or so into this area here. So this is up the Tasman Sea, obscured by Fiji, etc. So not a whole lot of size to be expected from that one either. And then that, in fact, impacted New Zealand. And then as we roll it out, we get right now into just about the current situation. Here we go. And here's that little low that developed sort of south of southwest of Tahiti. 22-foot seas, not very impressive, and that's supposed to go into Sunday evening. Then we do a little bit better here. And relative to California, yes, on the Great Circle paths, but completely shadowed and small. When you get seas 26 feet or less, it's really difficult to get much energy to survive the long journey up into California. Hawaii might do a little bit better, though. It is aimed well up there, up the Great Circle paths there. What's that, about the 186-degree pass? So some swell for the islands from that, assuming it forms. And then we roll this out, looking for something in the future. So here we go. We're into Wednesday evening. This system here, it says 30-foot seas, but the reality was previous models had this one developing much stronger. This is the 12Z run. First a little pulse and some 30-foot seas into Friday with a second pulse behind it. But just not real impressive. Still, given the time of year, it's back around swell. Actually, let's roll this back. Let's take a look at the swell angle here. It is making that trek right up the east side of New Zealand, which gives you that 218 to 220 degree angle, covered southwest angle for Northern California and for Southern California, and unshadowed by Tahiti. That's the biggest factor there. Anyway, roll that out. Another system makes its way under New Zealand, supposedly a week out on Saturday, but it is pretty much in the shadow, except right at the get-go. It's, there you go, 212 or so, so definitely shadowed. And then that's pretty much it. We'll roll this out, see what happens, and that's kind of it. So continued suggestion of something going on here under New Zealand. The models are all over the place. It's strong one run, not so strong the next, backs off yet more a third, then comes back yet the fourth run. So it's hard to tell. The only thing that ever really matters is the 00-hour hindcast. That's dead reality. Other than that, it's all a forecast, a projection, but at least it's a little bit better than than what's been happening as of late. So again, some more small southern hemiswell is possible. Let's go take a look at the long-term projections. We've been closely monitoring the supposed development of El Nino. One of the key factors we look for is the Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia and Tahiti. Negative numbers, prolonged negative numbers, suggest at a minimum the active phase of the MJO, and if it continues for months, then that is suggestive of El Nino. Right now we're running through a little pocket of relatively negative numbers, but nothing markedly so. Current values minus 8.44. This is suggestive of probably a weak inactive phase of the MJO. The 30-day average minus 5.69, which has actually been holding well for over a month now, which at a minimum suggests the active phase of the MJO, if not a tendency towards El Nino. The 90-day average, which would be a real stronger indicator, is basically zero, though, suggesting of neither El Nino or La Nina, just a neutral pattern. Next, let's take a look at surface wind deviations from normal. Current values, this is at the 850 millibar level, up about 4,500 feet, but is supposed to be a good representation of what's going on down at the surface. Currently, we see maybe weak west anomalies here on the equator. Again, here's Australia. The Philippines are out in here. Weak westerly anomalies, these are suggestive of the active phase of the MJO, fading to neutral near the date line. And then we get continues south of Hawaii here, neutral, and neutral on over to the Galapagos Islands. What we want to see is westerly anomalies in the West Pacific. That would be indicative of a westerly wind burst, and that is what generates Kelvin waves, and Kelvin waves are the kickoff mechanism for El Nino. Looking a week out, we see building easterly anomalies, not particularly strong, and what we're looking for is just a couple of degrees either side of the equator, and mainly bound by the area from about the date line to about 140 or so. So this box right here, easterly anomalies, that is not supportive of Kelvin wave development. Going to neutral near the date line, and then pretty much neutral the rest of the way across the Pacific Ocean. The interesting part is these models have not been very good at depicting reality or the forecast. What's even more interesting is down at the surface, the picture is actually often different than what the models suggest, and we'll show you an example right now. Here's data from the TAO array. These are buoys at the ocean surface. They're positioned when they're all up and operational at various places across the equator, the whole way across the Pacific. Currently, ground truth, these sensors are suggesting westerly anomalies, and a lot bit stronger than what was depicted by the models. So that is a good sign, and this has been going on for a week or more now, so there's definitely some sort of a westerly wind burst going on in this region. Also, surface temperatures, notice this, 1.5 degrees above normal or more, bordering on 2 degrees. Small area here, and really the Nino 3.4 region starts at 120, so between about, from about this box here to here is what one looks at. If these surface temperatures are above normal, then you can declare El Nino if it's going on for months at a time. But the trend's in the right direction, certainly not any negative numbers. We're going to get more into that in a second. So we have westerly winds, we have warm surface anomalies. Those anomalies appear to be growing and building in aerial coverage too. This is good news considering last week when we looked at this data there were pockets of negative anomalies here. That appears to be erased, which is great news. Here's another view, surface level winds. These are actually the 00-hour hindcast and this is 850 millibar. The oranges and red are westerly anomalies. This is the equator right here. This is what we'll call the Kelvin generation area. Notice August 3rd, westerly anomalies, and it just continued and still continues through the 7th. So this is again some evidence to suggest that this westerly wind burst is fairly solid and has been going on for quite a few days. We'll take a look at some forecast data now. Oranges and yellows represent the inactive phase of the MJO, which one would assume to mean easterly anomalies. This is the statistic model. It suggests that the inactive phase is in fact trying to get a foothold in the Kelvin wave generation area. It's supposed to go for about 5 days and then peter out. The dynamic model suggests something a little bit more ominous, that in fact the inactive phase is to go for the next 2 weeks, not making particularly strong headway. Notice this little pocket of blue here. So this is the area right here that we're most interested in. The blue would suggest westerly anomalies or the active phase of the MJO. So kind of a mixed bag, hard to say. We don't even have a lot of confidence in these models because they've proved to be wrong as of late. And then there's the 40-day upper level model. This is at the jet stream level. Again, the oranges and yellows tend to represent areas unsupportive of precipitation and presumably the inactive phase of the MJO. So this model here also suggests that that's in play and is supposed to go through about the end of the month, start moving into the East Pacific, petering out, and then the very weak version of the active phase would take over and get us well into September. If El Nino was in fact in play, you would want to see basically a neutral pattern bordering slightly towards the active phase. So this model has been all over the place from day to day. It has shown strong inactive phase, then literally yesterday there was nothing. Now it's come back a little bit. Either way, the model is not particularly reliable. It depicted in June that all of July would be locked down by the active phase. Turned out it was a dead neutral pattern, if not bordering slightly on the active phase. So we're not going to put a whole lot of stock in this, but it's something to monitor just the same. Next, let's take a look at surface level, sea surface level temperature anomalies from normal. Okay, and here is the main area we've been monitoring. This is where a Kelvin wave, a large Kelvin wave that was generated by westerly winds in January, February, and March erupted, peaking about the end of June. As of right now, we would have suspected that this would start collapsing entirely, and in fact it started to do that last week. There was all kinds of pockets of cool water starting to show up all along here, looking particularly cool here in the Nino 3.4 region, and about 3 days ago, all of a sudden those pockets of cool water started disappearing, and it started backfilling in with warmer water, not blazing warm. If you look at charts from the 97 El Nino, there was a very distinct warm water pattern built in by that time, but still, this is respectable and has been going on now since May or so. So we're into 3.5 months of warming in this area. The expectation is that's having some effect in the atmosphere. Also notice the entire North Pacific Ocean is full of warmer than normal water. Lots of warm water buildup off the California coast as well. Almost no sign of upwelling as a result of what normally would be high pressure out here, creating a lot of like northeast type winds between here and Hawaii. Virtually none of that, and if you've been in the water in California, you know sea surface temperatures are way above normal. It's like 62 degrees in Northern California and well above that in Southern California. Probably 4 to 5 degrees above normal for this time of year, which is good news and a nice break from the cold. All this warm water has undoubtedly helped fuel the hurricanes that have tracked over and near Hawaii, and is also having some effect on tropics in the West Pacific and also in the East Pacific, though it appears we're moving into sort of a break here in the tropical development as of late, but it's not for lack of warm water. There's plenty of that. Let's take a look at time-lapse imagery. So we're going to take a little trip back in time. Here we are, March. Westerly wind burst was fully in effect here over the western Pacific. West winds, Kelvin wave developing, and notice just sort of a neutral pattern with pockets of cool water was in effect over the equatorial Pacific at the time. The westerly wind burst continues, still had cool water bleeding off in a stream here off Peru into April, and then sometime about late April, May, Kelvin waves started to impact the leading edges, and notice warm water building over the entire equatorial Pacific region. The Kelvin wave hit in earnest in June, and notice water temperatures really going up, and then peaked out about the end of June, and there you go, well-defined signature, not super impressive compared to the 97 El Nino, but solid nonetheless. And then we get into July, it's still hanging in there, but then we start seeing cool waters showing up about the end of July, and that peaked out about somewhere here about the end of July. And notice there's cool pockets the whole way through the region, but then we get to here and there's a little bit of backfilling. You can see here water starting to warm up again, and things don't look as bad here. Other data we have suggests this is even much better than this image here, so that's encouraging news. Here's the recent high-res data off of Peru and Ecuador. Still solid 2 to almost 4 degree anomalies covering this area. A little bit of pocket of kind of fluctuates between cool and warm along the coast of Peru here, but solid warm anomalies. And then further out you see the pockets of cooler water starting to appear with warmer water in pockets. And I mean, when it's warm, it's pretty warm. It's probably 3 to 4 degrees above normal in these pockets. But still, there's a bit of this cool anomalies showing up, breaking up the pattern some. The real interesting thing is what's going on at depth. That is down at the ocean surface. Here we go. This is, let's say, Ecuador is here. The far West Pacific is here, and this is depth down to 300 meters. What we notice here, these are, and these are absolute water temperatures here. These are anomalies from normal for this time of year. Notice 2 degree anomalies under the date line, building Kelvin wave as a result of westerly anomalies had been blowing for several weeks, strongest in the past week. This is good news. This pocket of warm water is moving to the east, and what's noticeable here is there was a pocket of 1 to 2 degree below normal water right here last week. That's gone. The path is open to allow warm water to push on through here. Now, we were talking about this last week. This and the cool anomalies we're seeing at the surface, we believe, are the result, or were the result, of the upwelling phase of the Kelvin wave. That is, typically you have a blast of warm water followed by a slight cooling period, and then yet another blast of warm water, and we'll get into that in a second. But as of right now, all the cool water's gone. We're back into a warm regime, and it's warm at the surface. I mean, there's no sign of cool water anywhere here in the equatorial Pacific, so that's great news. You can see it another way here, not quite as impressive in this image, and this is modeled data, so it's hard to say which model is right, but this is actually showing warmer pockets starting to develop, where here is the cool pool that was present. Looks a little bit more exaggerated on this image than the other one, but clearly here is the new developing Kelvin wave. This one's showing two, almost 2.5 degree anomalies building here under the date line. And here is the warm, when you have westerly winds at the or westerly anomalies, it pushes water down depth and then makes this trek here. And the suspicion is this water warms more as it gets pushed more to the surface. It gets more concentrated. So 2 degree anomalies here could be 3 or more degrees when they make it into Ecuador. So not super impressive, but certainly not a cold regime, certainly not signs of La Nina. And next we have upper ocean, here we go, upper ocean heat anomalies. And this goes time down this side, and then this is like the other chart. This is the West Pacific, this is the East Pacific, specifically Ecuador. Here we go, Ecuador, 80 west, and we're in the far West Pacific here near the Philippines. So here's what's been going on in the past. In September, there was one small Kelvin wave that made it across, then a patch of cool. So this is the downwelling phase of the Kelvin wave, the upwelling phase, cooler waters. Then in October, a stronger Kelvin wave that made it the whole way across, with yet a stronger upwelling Kelvin wave following it. Then in January, February, March, April, the large Kelvin wave that we've been talking about and monitoring, that hit, has impacted, is starting to dissipate now. And here is the opposite response, the upwelling Kelvin wave that is in flow right now. And then here is yet the next Kelvin wave forming, and per this one, it's 1 to 1.5 degree. About 1 degree. Is that? Yep, that's right. 1 degree anomalies is what this is suggesting, but this is sort of averaged out over the entire 300-meter depth here. So, and this is the latest image. We just got this. So, this is about like what we'd expect. At some point here, we expect these cool waters to disappear and more warm water build. Certainly not to that extent, but enough to get some sort of an atmospheric response going. And with the westerly winds blowing in the West Pacific, it's a completely, it would be normal to expect that we would see more warming occurring. And then finally, the output from the CFSV2 model forecast for water temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region. Currently suggesting, it looks like about 1.3 degree anomalies, 1 degree anomalies starting October, up to about 1.3 in December. This model has consistently been suggesting now for several months, somewhere between here and about 1.45 degrees, so not a whole lot of change from even last week's model run. This would be a so the 2009-2010 El Nino was about a 1.4 degree El Nino. This one would be in that vein if it all plays out the way it suggests. One would have to believe the models. At this point in time, it doesn't look like that, but assuming we're in the upwelling phase of a Kelvin wave, that more warm water would result, and we expect that to be happening given that the Kelvin wave that is in development right now. And here's the same model and its forecast in August. Notice it suggests the cool pool and the pockets here, just exactly like what we're seeing, and sort of this splitting of the warm pool in the Nino 1.2 region. As you get into September, notice that warm water is supposed to start building in all over the entire Nino 3.4 region into October. And then we go up into November, it starts building yet even more. We're looking at about 1 to 2 degree anomalies, peaking roughly in December. There's one little pocket there of maybe 2 degree anomalies, but everything else is in the about 1 to 2 degree range, continuing into January. So this is a pretty normal looking El Nino if one is to believe the model. But as of now, all the data suggests that we're on track, and that the only bit of concern is, again, the cool anomalies that are showing up, but that is, again, the upwelling phase of the previous Kelvin wave, and we're not too concerned at the moment. So for now, we assume that El Nino is in development, that there is some weak coupling going on in the atmosphere, though the Southern Oscillation Index does not show it yet. The 90-day values are all neutral, but the development of hurricanes, the recurving of hurricanes forecast to, we've seen several bits of this, of tropical energy moving towards the Gulf of Alaska. In fact, low pressure up there currently is of tropical origins, and we're into August. About mid-August would be the earliest you'd expect to see any kind of energy coming from recurving tropical systems, and theoretically there's supposed to be little like 2-foot swell at 18 or 19 seconds coming from tropical systems that have recurved. We'll see what really happens. But anyway, things appear to be on track. There's some small southern hemi swell forecast this week. Nothing particularly impressive. We're kind of in the doldrums right now, just waiting for fall to kick in. Probably be another 4 weeks till that happens. So it's get whatever surf you can and make the best of it. And we'd like to again thank our sponsor, Vunabaca.com, for bringing you this weekly surf forecast. Check them out at Vunabaca.com. So that's it for now. We'll do this again next week, same time, same channel. Go get some surf and stay tuned. Keep your fingers crossed. Thanks. Bye.